Hey, buenos dias, que paso amigos, John's Moto Garage. Welcome back to the channel. So you just picked up your Honda Grom, you went out, you thought it'd be wicked easy to pop a wheelie, and to your major disappointment, you can't get that front wheel up in the air, and you're super bummed out. You're thinking, what the heck, man? What am I doing wrong? What happened? Why is my bike broken? Why can't I pop this wheelie? Welcome back to the channel, you guys. Today we're talking Honda Grom wheelies, and I've actually had a lot of people requesting a wheelie tutorial specific to the Honda Grom, so that's why I'm out here doing this today. So big shout out and thank you to all you who support the channel. You can like and subscribe if you dig it, and be sure to hit me on Instagram at John's Moto Garage. You can support the channel also through Patreon. Big shout out to the patrons. Whew, it's hot out here. It's getting hot. All right, so if you're anything like me, you went out and bought a Honda Grom thinking it was going to be easy peasy to learn the art of the wheelie. And the Honda Grom, in my opinion, is the perfect bike for it, but it is still a challenge. There is a learning curve. And so today, I'm going to try to bring to you guys how to do a wheelie on a Honda Grom. Now, a few things keep in mind. There are different techniques. Everybody does it a little bit differently. Everybody's going to learn at their own pace and ride at your own risk. Get proper safety gear, helmet, obviously get yourself a bike, and find yourself a nice open empty lot like such, so that you don't have to worry about distractions and traffic, all that garbage. Get some buddies, some people to ride with you ideally, that way if you go down you have somebody to help take you to the ER or take you home, or at least to pick up your ego off the ground. Also, I'm going to be emphasizing rear brake a ton, so just make sure you remember right off the bat rear brake. There's a lot of tutorials out there, and this is going to be like a beginner through intermediate tutorial, you could say, because I feel like I'm at about the intermediate level at this point. Beware, there are a lot of people out there who will do how-to wheelie videos who are either wicked advanced and they've already kind of forgotten what it was like to be a beginner, and they said give it gas, dump the clutch, and pull back and hit balance point. I'm going to be a little bit more in depth than that. But also, you got a lot of people out there doing how-to wheelies, and they don't even know how to wheelie. So you sit there watching this whole video, and you get to the end, and you're like, wait, this dude doesn't even know what he's talking about. Hopefully, I can fill in some of the gaps there a little bit in between. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. And I'm going to warm up. I'm going to show you a few wheelies, and then we'll start talking about it. Now, just a few things about the wheelie. When I first wanted to learn wheelies, to me, a wheelie was a wheelie. You can do it or you can't. I've since learned that the wheelie honestly is a trick that you continue progressing, because you've got the wheelie at its most basic level, which is just getting the front wheel up in the air, and then you've got the most advanced wheelie, which is stunting, doing 360s, shifting through the gears, one-handers, dragging, all that kind of crazy stuff. Again, we're going to be starting beginner to intermediate. So I'm going to warm up a little bit, rock a couple wheelies, and then we'll jump into the steps. Now, a little bit about the wheelies here as I practice my one-handed wheelie. I've been at this for less than a year, and I did another how-to wheelie video a few months back. Link below, you can check that out. Yeah, check out the link below for my other how-to wheelie video just in general. Also, the basic concept, the steps for doing a wheelie should apply to pretty much all motorcycles. But the Honda Grom's a good one because it's gutless. The bike has no power, so you have to learn proper technique. You cannot rely on the engine to get the wheel up into the air. Be patient with yourself. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, this isn't something you learn overnight. If you want to do it, plan on putting a lot of time into it. Enjoy the journey, enjoy the learning curve, enjoy the progression, but don't plan on picking it up like that. I've been at it for almost a year now, and I still feel like I have as much to learn today as I did day one, you know what I mean? Today we're gonna be talking sit down, clutch up wheelies on the Honda Grom in first gear. My bike does have some aftermarket stuff on it, but I have ridden stock Groms, and it is possible to do wheelies in the stock form as well. You can do mods to make it easier, but don't fool yourself. You don't have to have all these expensive upgrades to do wheelies on the Honda Grom. I've done it on a bone stock Honda Grom, and it's a negligible difference that it makes. At least in my case, it wasn't that big a difference. So what you're going to want to focus on is the fundamentals of the wheelie, the clutch up, brake control, throttle control, and body position. Those are 4 basic things that are really gonna make or break not only the wheelie, but how safely you learn, and hopefully avoiding the worst outcome, which is looping the motorcycle, which, yes, I have done it twice on the Honda Grom and a DRZ. Ugh. These are the 4 basics of doing a wheelie, okay? Take notes, you guys. Pause and take notes. Number 1, I cannot emphasize enough, use the rear brake. Definitely 100% always make sure you learn to cover the rear freaking brake. Half the tutorial videos I watched never even mention the rear brake, other than if you're going to loop out, hit the rear brake. But the good ones I watch, they say use the rear brake throughout the entire wheelie, not just at the beginning, not just at the end. Learn to modulate that rear brake throughout the entire wheelie. Watch some of the pros, some of the super good people out there who do slow wheelies, you know, the stand-up wheelies, even the long ones. Watch that foot and you'll notice they modulate the rear brake throughout the entire wheelie, and or they have a handbrake up here. The better you get, the less you have to rely on that rear brake. But starting out, if you want to learn safely, learn to use the rear brake. What does it do? As the front wheel comes up, if you go too far back, that rear brake, you tap on it and it's going to bring the front wheel back down. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Number 2, we're going to be doing a clutch up. You have different types of wheelies. You can do a power wheelie, which doesn't use the clutch. You're just using the power of the wheel and body position and all that to get the wheel up in the air. Or you can do a clutch up. I'm going to be talking clutch up today. So that's step number 2. Step number 3 is going to be gas, and we'll kind of combine it with throttle as well as body position. And we'll talk about body position. That's leaning forward. Where do you sit on the seat? How do you pull up / pull back to get the front wheel up in the air? What do you do when the wheel's up in the air to stay in a straight line? All that kind of thing. Number 4, we'll eventually get to hitting balance point. So I'm going to tell you right from the outset, the key to doing a legit wheelie where you're balancing and you're not chasing it out, which means you're not having to give it more gas and then you finally hit your red line rev limiter and you have to put the wheel down, but where you're actually balancing it out, where you can even slow down in the wheelie. The key to that is getting to balance point as quickly as possible and then being able to get off the gas. So it's throttle control and brake and all that, but that's going to be towards the end as you become an intermediate. So those are the 4 steps. Again, make sure you use that rear brake, clutching it up, throttle control / body position, and then ultimately learning how to get to balance point quickly and efficiently. So the idea is you're working with the bike to do this instead of working against the bike to do the wheelie. So first thing, again, like I said, I cannot emphasize enough, get used to using the rear brake. Initially, it's not going to be normal, it's not going to be natural, it's not going to be instinctual. So you have to practice it, make it a habit. And the way we're going to do that is you just deliberately tap the rear brake, tap the rear brake, tap the rear brake. Okay, we get past that. Number 2 is going to be the clutch up. So what is a clutch up? Basically, and there's tons of videos that go very in depth with this, but basically you're going to pull in the clutch, give the bike a little bit of gas, and while you still have the throttle open, you're going to dump the clutch. Actually dump it. Like, don't slowly let it out, don't slip it, just dump it, let it completely out. Ideally, if you can do it with 1 finger or 2 fingers, that's going to be best so that you still have a good grip on the handlebars. So that's what it is. On the Honda Grom, I go at about 3, 4, 5 miles per hour, going very slow, pull in the clutch, give it a little bit of gas, dump the clutch. Now the first few times that you guys go out and do these drills and practice it, start very easy and work your way into it. So the first few times, don't even try to get that wheel up in the air, just get a feel for what it's like when the bike jerks forward from dumping the clutch. So clutch in, a little bit of gas, clutch out. Clutch in, a little bit of gas, clutch out. I'm not worrying about body position. I'm not worrying about actually getting the wheel up in the air. I'm just doing that drill, getting an idea of what it feels like, because it can feel kind of harsh initially. It can kind of catch you off guard because the bike is going to be lurking forward on you. So just get the feel for that. Now the thing about the clutch up is it's an art, and you're working on getting the clutch up, the body position, the gas, all that. You're working on getting it in sync, making one fluid motion, but it's not going to happen overnight. So you're going to have to experiment with different speeds. You're going to have to experiment with giving it different amounts of gas. You're going to have to experiment with your body position. You're going to have to experiment. What are you gonna have to do? That's right, experiment. So clutch up. So the first few times you're not even trying to get the wheel up in the air, you're really just trying to get a feel for what it's like. See that? Now once you get a feel for what it's like, you're going to do the clutch up, but give it a little bit more gas, and again just work your way into it. So now we're going to give it a little more gas, only work on getting that front wheel an inch, 2, 3 inches up in the air. There you go. And again, I'm going pretty dang slow. The bike's, you know, almost wanting to stall on me. Clutch in, gas, clutch out. Whoa, dude, we did it, bro. Again, you're not going to do anything close to that starting out. But you'll basically get a feel for how much gas you need to give it, when to dump the clutch at the different RPMs. I don't pay a lot of attention to the RPMs. I really don't, so I can't speak to that. I just do it by feel and by, yeah, mostly by feel. So you're gonna go out and you're gonna do this drill over and over and over again, not even getting that front wheel very high up in the air, just slowly bringing it up, bringing it down, bringing it up, bringing it down. Practice those drills. Repetition, repetition. Let's do it. So there's an inch or two off the ground, a little bit higher up in the ground, and a little bit higher. Okay, so now let's assume you've done that. You've gone out there, you've practiced a ton with the clutch up. You may still have trouble getting the front wheel up in the air. The next thing you can focus on is body position. Now, I sit basically on the 2017 Grom. You notice you got this lip right here. I sit with my butt like all the way back to that lip. You're not going to lean super far forward. You're not going to lean super far back to bring the front wheel up. You're going to kind of compress the front forks and then pull back as you dump the clutch and give it gas. So press the front forks a little bit, pull up and back as you give it gas, and slip the clutch. And that can be make or break, learning to kind of get that motion and make it fluid and in sync with your clutch slipping. So I'm going to practice implementing body position now to the slipping the clutch. And what you'll find is, while you're slipping the clutch before and maybe you were only getting the front wheel, you know, a couple inches off the ground, if you do proper body position now, where you compress and preload the suspension and pull back with your clutch slip, then you'll find that maybe that front wheel comes a little bit higher up in the air. But now that we're going to be getting that front wheel a little bit higher up in the air, focus on hitting that rear brake. As soon as the wheel comes up in the air, tap that rear brake and use the rear brake to try and bring that front wheel down. Initially, you're going to chop the throttle. It's just that's what's going to happen. You're going to get scared. You're going to feel that weightlessness and just chop the throttle. The wheel will come down. But as you get more comfortable, try using that rear brake to bring the wheel down and kind of feel how it works. So now we're going to work on implementing body position with slipping the clutch to get the front wheel higher. So again, you kind of preload, push the forks down, and pull up and back as you're dumping the clutch. Bam, there you have it. All right, now you're going to hear a lot of people say, never chase out your wheelie, don't do it, that's not a proper wheelie, and they're right. You don't want to be chasing it out. However, inevitably, you're not going to work your way straight up to balance point. That's something you have to find gradually over time. So a couple times it's going to be okay to chase the wheelie out a little bit just to get a feel and start getting that front wheel higher and higher. So I'm going to show you what it's like chasing a rear wheel out, or chasing a wheelie out. But again, you're going to be covering that rear brake and ready to hit the rear brake if you need to bring the wheel down, saying you go too high. All right, so this is an example of chasing a wheelie out. So as you can see, I brought the wheel, it actually came up, you know, pretty good height, but I had to keep giving it gas to keep the wheel up. That's chasing it, and you eventually are going to hit your rev limiter and it's going to come back down. But that's how everybody really starts, and on a Honda Grom it's a little bit less scary chasing it out. It's going to happen, you're going to end up doing it. But focus on just gradually, steadily bringing the front wheel up higher and higher. And the way you're going to be doing that is, again, you're messing with when and where you slip the clutch, what speed, what RPMs. You're going to mess with body position, and then you're going to mess with, you know, how much gas to give it. And it's all about drills and repetition. So we're just going to practice right now. All I'm going to practice is bringing the wheel up and down, up and down. I'm going to try controlling the bringing it down using my rear brake, and I'm going to try to slowly bring it higher and higher. So progressively bringing that front wheel higher and higher. That's just a little bit. A little bit more. A little bit more. And then a little bit more. Now for me, it was like, you know, 2-3 months between starting and chasing it out and barely getting the wheel up, and actually feeling like I kind of had an idea of brake control and balance point. So it's not going to happen overnight, but that's just an idea accelerated of what it's going to look like. Just slowly bring the front wheel a little bit higher and higher. Let's do it again. And again, I'm slipping the clutch. I'm giving it a little bit more gas or less gas depending how it feels. You know, if the wheel's not coming up, you might have to give it more gas. If it feels like it's coming up too high, maybe give it a little bit less gas. You're just getting a feel for how the bike works and how the bike is going to react to the inputs that you're giving it. And then body position. Body position can sometimes make or break. You may be giving it just the right amount of gas and slipping the clutch at the right time, but if you're not just giving that little bit of body position where you kind of compress the forks and then pop up and pull back, then it may not be giving it enough oomph to get that front wheel in the air. All right. So there's just a little bit. A little bit more. A little bit more. And even a little bit more there. Now here's the biggest thing. This is where people typically end up having an issue and looping the bike. Instead of learning to use the rear brake to control the height of the front wheel, they start to get choppy on the throttle. They bring the wheel up to where they feel like it's high, they let off the throttle, then they give it a little bit more gas, then they let off and give it a little more gas, they let off, and then they give it too much gas. And next thing they know, they're looping because they're not used to using that rear brake. So now that you get an idea, once you're comfortable bringing the front wheel up in the air, and you're gradually getting it higher and higher, make sure you're focusing on using the rear brake. You're gonna have to do drills deliberately using that rear brake every time the wheel comes up in the air. So that's the next thing we're gonna do. Bring the wheel up in the air. As soon as we do, hit that rear brake. And something that's gonna feel very counterintuitive is hitting that rear brake while maintaining the gas, while keeping that throttle open at whatever level it's open. That seems very counterintuitive because typically when we hit the rear brake, we automatically let off the gas if we're slowing down or something. Try to bring the front wheel up, use the rear brake to bring it down. Do that over and over and over again, repetition. As you get comfortable using that rear brake, then you're going to practice keeping the throttle open, if not even throttling a little bit through the application of that rear brake. I'll show you some examples. Front wheel up, rear brake, wheel down. So you can't really see, but I basically tap the rear brake to bring the wheel down. And the first couple times it may come down harshly. You're gonna have to learn how to modulate that rear brake, not too much, not too little, and that just comes with practice. So you can kind of hear as I bring the wheel up and hit that rear brake, how it kind of bogs down and brings it, and you see the front wheel come back down. See that? So that's the rear brake. My gas, my throttle is still open as I'm applying the rear brake. Now this is where people have different methods. Some people give it gas, let off, rear brake, and they kind of alternate between the two. I found that I can bring it up to that sweet spot where my gas is right there at the same spot. I'm barely modulating the throttle at all, and I'm just tapping the rear brake. I'll show you an example here. Watch my throttle hand throughout the duration of this wheelie, and you'll notice that it does not modulate much at all. So once the wheelie is up in that spot, I'm barely messing with this throttle hand at all. Very little inputs. Very small inputs. Most of this control is on that rear brake. See how my throttle hand's not all choppy? Now I'll show you an example of what a lot of people do. Yeah, I've even done it myself, you know, when I'm learning, but this is what a lot of people are going to do that you want to try to avoid doing. See that? So that was no rear brake, and it's just scary. So that's no rear brake and kind of chasing it out. I feel like I'm getting back to that balance point, but oh, it's just scary not being able to rely on your rear brake. It's so much easier if you use that rear brake, because that rear brake is just like, it just stops you, man. And it's really hard to explain. You just have to go out and practice and try it, and you'll start to realize the concept. It's a very, I don't know, challenging concept to understand if you haven't experienced it. So that's what a lot of people do initially. No rear brake, they're just chopping the throttle, trying to find balance point, and then kind of like, you know, control the throttle in and out of it. And some people, don't get me wrong, they kill it doing it like that. But if you're not ready to hit that rear brake, it's not if, just when you're gonna loop it, and it's too dangerous for me. I don't play with it. I'm always on the rear brake because that's the way I roll. So I think that covers the basics, okay? The beginner basics for learning to get the front wheel up, get into the wheelie, and control the wheelie. You're going to practice clutching it up. In order to get that wheel up, it's going to be a combination of the clutch up, figuring out what RPMs to be at, how much gas to give it. Usually people aren't giving it enough gas, but I'd start low and work your way up. In addition to that, you're working on body position. Kind of lean forward a little bit, compress that front fork, the front suspension. As you dump the clutch and give it gas and pull back, it's going to make it easier to get that wheel up in the air. Sometimes body position is what makes or breaks people being able to get the wheel up in the air. With all that, use the rear brake to make sure you're able to safely bring the front wheel back down. Do drills, just learning to use that rear brake. Wheel up, rear brake, wheel down. Wheel up, rear brake, wheel down. As you do that, progressively work on getting that wheel higher and higher and higher. Once you've gotten all that under control, and more or less you feel confident and like you've mastered your ability to bring the wheel up safely, to use the rear brake to bring it back down, the trick to getting into balance point is just going to be feeling it out. Repetition, 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 feeling it out, bringing the front wheel higher and higher and higher and back. And what I always say is I'm flirting with balance point. It's basically you're getting that feel. The first couple times you get far back, you're gonna feel like you're about to loop the bike. But what you'll realize is balance point is even farther back than that typically. A big helpful tip is have somebody else record you, get video of yourself doing it, and you'll notice your front wheel isn't nearly as high as you thought it was, and then that gives you a little bit more confidence to lean back farther and farther and farther. Also, some people will do wheelies kind of all hunched up on the tank. Other people lean super far back. I found if you're somewhat neutral, you know, not all the way forward, not all the way back, but somewhat neutral, even when the front wheel is up in the air, that's kind of a, you know, a good body position to be in. So now, how do you find that balance point? Like I said, it's just going to be a matter of playing with it, flirting with it, going a little bit farther, pushing your limits a little bit more, but doing it gradually. You're not going to do it overnight. But eventually, when you do find that balance point, it's kind of a sense, it's going to feel weightless. You're not going to feel like you're fighting that front wheel to keep it up in the air anymore. You're going to feel like you kind of settle in to that perfect little spot. And I'll try to show you an example here. See how the bike is just kind of smoothly rolling. I'm kind of going back between 18 and 17 miles per hour. I'm not going faster, I'm not slowing down. Yeah, slowing down a little bit, but the key is you don't want to be speeding up too much. Now you'll notice, since you're going kind of slow, the bike is going to want to teeter side to side. And there's different ways to address that. You can lower the pressure in your rear tire a little bit, but you also just use your body to kind of counterbalance while you're doing that as well. And you know, flat surfaces are going to make it easier. This slopes down that way, so it's a little bit harder. And like I mentioned before, one of the big tricks to the wheelie is, or to balance point, sorry, I'm in the middle of a wheelie. One of the big tricks is get to balance point as quickly as possible. So that way when you're up in balance point, you're not going super fast. So get there as quickly as possible, and you're going to kind of give it gas, get to balance point, and let off the gas a little bit until you find that little bit of a sweet spot. Okay, let's do a few more here just to show you. Get there as quickly as possible, and I'm using my brake control. Very little throttle modulation here, mostly brake modulation. Take that hand off a little bit. So I do a little bit of throttle, a little bit of brake. There we go. But notice I'm in balance point, you know. So there you have it. But that's going to be, in my opinion, kind of like your intermediate wheelie, where you pop into balance point and you can maintain it for a little while. So again, key to balance point is going to be, first, you're not going to find it right away. You're going to have to ease your way into it. When I was learning, what would happen is I'd get to where I thought I was in balance point, and then one day I'd be out and I'd flirt with going a little bit farther back, and I'd realize, oh, that's the sweet spot. That's the actual balance point. I probably went through doing that like 3 or 4 times before I finally realized, oh wait, that's where balance point is. If you can get there as quickly as possible and then slow it down so that you're not hitting rev limiter, that's going to be the way to do it. And it's harder to do a slow wheelie and then to be going fast and doing a wheelie. But if you can dial in the fundamentals and learn that slow wheelie and figure it out that way, it's going to make everything else so much easier. And the nice thing with doing the slow wheelie, while it does take a lot more, require more patience, if you do loop it, not if, but when you do loop it, you're going to be going so much slower. I've looped both my bikes, the Grom and the DRZ. I was probably going 10-15 miles tops. Minimal damage to the motos, minimal damage to me physically, huge damage to your ego though, so just be warned. So there you have it. Let's do a couple more of those just for practice, and then we'll recap and we'll call it a day, and I'll try to show you some examples of the progression as well. And then the cool thing is, once you start to learn, you know, once you get a good handle on the wheelie, then you can implement shifting through the gears, one-handers, you know, screwing around, doing all that stuff. But really try to dial in the fundamentals. All right, let's do one more slow wheelie, pop it up to balance point, and try to maintain it with a minimal throttle and a little bit of brake control. Balance point. Little bit of throttle, definitely doing my brake control. One hander, bro. You see, once you get into that spot, the bike kind of hangs on it itself. Another thing I didn't mention, as you're coming down on the wheelie, and this you're going to focus on more once you get comfortable bringing the wheel up high, if you can, you want to accelerate out of the wheelie so that when you bring that front wheel down, it comes down softly and doesn't slam down hard. So now I'll try to show you a stand-up wheelie, just some of the you know, some of the other basics, shifting through the gears. All right, you guys, I think that's going to do it. Just some of the basics for getting started. Again, just remember, always cover that rear brake and practice using the rear brake deliberately. Practice with that before you flirt with getting that front wheel any significant height up in the air. Be practicing using that rear brake. Secondly, learn how to clutch it up. That's going to require practice. You're going to have to experiment with different speeds, different you know, amounts of gas, where you're at with the RPMs. Body position, that can make or break. So you kind of compress the front forks, lean forward, and then back up as you're slipping the clutch and giving it gas. With the body position is going to be throttle control. Not too much, not too little. Try not to be choppy on the throttle. Starting out, that'll probably be the case, but slowly try to get to where your throttle hand is very controlled and very dialed in. And then when you get to that point, progressively but slowly start to increase the height on that front wheel. Give it a little bit more gas, progressively and slowly, so that it's not gonna loop you day one. And then once you're real comfortable with those, hitting balance point is just a matter of slowly creeping farther and farther back, getting comfortable with it, getting a feel for it, flirting with that balance point until you finally get to that point where you're like, whoa, I'm here, I feel it, I'm balancing, the bike feels weightless, I'm not fighting it, it's just chilling where it needs to be. Those are going to be the fundamentals. Remember, you got to do that rear brake, and you got to put in the time and effort. It doesn't happen overnight. Some people learn it real quickly. For others, it takes a long time. You each have to learn at your own pace, but remember, enjoy it. Don't beat yourself up over it. These are just wheelies. Find a place where it's safe to practice. Don't be out in traffic. Wear proper gear. Don't be like me. Ideally, you should have a full jacket on, gloves, all that good stuff. But most importantly, you guys have fun doing it. Enjoy it. I'm going to try shifting through the gears a little bit, have some fun doing some one-handers and some stand-ups. And of course, if you guys dig the content, like and subscribe. You can hit me on Instagram at John's Moto Garage. And huge shout out to the patrons who support the channel that way through Patreon. Link below if you want to support the channel there as well. All right, we'll hit you guys up on the next one. Adios, nos vemos. Have fun out there, wheelie safe, and good luck. Little one-hander action. Shift in a second. There we go. Oh boy, sketchy, bro. All right, now let's try a little bit of a second gear stand up. These are pretty easy. You'll find stand-ups are wicked easy, but dial in the sit down, it's harder. And once you can figure that out, a stand-up is easy peasy. All right, I think that's gonna do it.